Hey there, Oregon. The last few years have certainly been interesting for those of you considering or looking at possibly making a move. Between the national media outlet stories and that story you heard from the guy at the bar, it's really hard to make sense of what's going on. And not only that, but why we're here. So let's take a look at where we've been and how we got there in this Oregon, Wisconsin housing market update. Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Minter, team lead at the Minter team at Realty Executives Cooper Spransy. All right, I'd like to keep this as short as I possibly can, so please understand that I'm going to skip out on some things that would be a topic of conversation. If you want to bring them up in the comments, by all means, let's have that conversation. Everything I'm about to touch on really deserves a deeper conversation and a longer message. But for now, I want to focus on two main factors that have affected our local housing market: interest rates and supply demand. If you refinanced your home or purchased a home in the 3% range, or even better, under 3%, prior to 2022, you are a winner. You hit the jackpot and you're in great shape. Shortly into 2022, rates started climbing out of the threes, into the fours, fives, sixes, even hitting into the sevens by the fall. But why does that matter for our housing market? Well, it affects both qualification and affordability. Let's start by looking at qualification. Generally speaking, a 1% change in interest rate is about a 10% change in your purchase power. So if you are qualified for a loan of $350,000 at 3%, and rates went up to 4%, you would now be qualified for $315,000. That's a big difference in the type of house you can buy. At 5%, that gets down to $280,000. So imagine by the time it gets up to 7%, you're really priced out of the market. And this is what we saw happen to a lot of people between 2021, 2022, and today. As rates rose, people could qualify for the last house. And as prices skyrocketed as well, that became a big problem. Let's look at this from an affordability standpoint. The median home price in Oregon last year was hovering around the $400,000 mark. So for this situation, let's assume we have somebody looking to buy a $400,000 house with 10% down when interest rates were 3%. That buyer would have been looking at about a $1,500 per month payment without taxes and PMI. Now for the same buyer to buy a $400,000 home in the fall of 2022, when rates hit 7%, that monthly payment was $2,395 a month. An almost $900 difference in the monthly payment just because of the change in interest rates over that 12-month period. Now that's what I mean by affordability. The mortgages became unaffordable for a number of people, and since prices kept going up, houses got more expensive as well. But this also created another problem in the market. People that had a 3.25% interest rate or refinanced into a 2.5% interest rate were also in a difficult spot. Assume a home buyer bought their house for $300,000 in 2017, and maybe they put 5% down. Perhaps they refinanced into 3% around 2020, and now they might owe about $250,000 on that house. This monthly payment would be about $1,200 a month. Now it's quite possible that this $300,000 home in 2017 would be $450,000 or more today. So if they sold after their expenses and taking their equity, they'd walk away with about $170,000 in their pocket. Now, many people would take that money and reinvest it into their next house, right? But if these people took that $170,000 that they earned on their $450,000 per sale and bought a $400,000 house, this is $50,000 less house than they currently live in. With rates when they hit 7%, that monthly payment, it would go up about $300 to $400 a month for less house. This is a major reason why so many people out there today can't afford to move up. They can't sell their middle house to get their end house because they can't justify the difference in the monthly payment between their current house at 3% interest rate and a new house at 6%. Finally, as part of affordability, as I've mentioned, prices have skyrocketed. In fact, through April of 2020 in Oregon, only about 20% of the houses coming on the market were over $500,000. This year, that number is 46%, which means almost half the houses coming on the market in our area are over $500,000. Add to this the extra interest rate, and it's become very difficult for many people to get a home. All right, lots of numbers, but if you're still with me, you got this. Number one, rates skyrocketed last year. Number two, this made it harder for people to qualify for and pay for what they wanted to buy. And number 3, this has kept many sellers from moving up to their next home as they're comfortable with their low interest rate payment. So now we have a supply-demand issue. Add to the fact that Dane County continues to grow and that Dane County continues to have a shortage of housing units. Not enough to keep up with population, and we have a problem. Let's look at this graph here real quick. And if you've seen previous videos, you've seen this before, but I want to share it once again because it's a really good visual for what's actually happening. Okay, what we have here are active listings versus sales in Dane County in 2022 and 2023. And with this blue line, what we see are the active properties. Now you'll see that we peaked out at about 700 houses on the market in Dane County, all right, with lows down around 200 to 300. But our sales peaked out at about 900 and dropped as low as about 300. So here's our sales. So our sales, this is our demand, and this is our supply. Now, demand and supply are on different axes with different numbers, so this isn't apples to apples. But what we're looking at here is just where we've been. So about 700 houses on the market at most over the last year. But if we go back and look at 2018 and 2019 and take a look 5 years ago, we're going to see that we are still peaking out at about 1,000 and just over 300. So our demand is actually very similar 5 years ago, but our supply peaked out at about 500 and dropped out at about 750. So in just 5 years ago, our supply was never as low. Our low supply was higher than our high supply is now, if you understand where I'm going with that, okay? We also had 2 to 3 times as many houses on the market in most months, again, just 5 years ago. And if you were in the market in 2018, 2019, you know that those were difficult years to buy a house because there was competition. Now, if we take a look and go back 10 years and see where we were 10 years ago, look at our blue line with active listings, up over 3,700 with a low of just over 2,700. Once again, our sales creeping up between 900 and 1,000 and not really dipping much below 300 short of these months as we are still kind of creeping out of the housing crash. Here's what that means. In the last 5 years, the number of available houses has fallen 2 to 3 times. 10 years ago, we had 4 times as many houses on the market. And guess what? In 2013, it wasn't a bad time to be on the market on either end. It was a decent time to buy and a decent time to sell. It was fair. But we have a long ways to go before we get back to those levels, much less levels that we might see in a housing crash or in a situation where we're going to see housing prices depreciate and home values depreciate, because we have an overabundance of houses and not enough demand. Will it happen? At some time we'll see it, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So I would expect more of the same for the near future. And in fact, many mortgage brokers predict we're going to see interest rates get back into the 4s, which could spark even more home buyers entering the market and increase that demand even further. If you have any further questions or want to know how this information could affect your potential move or your home value, let us know. We love serving our Oregon neighbors. Let's talk soon.